watch the video again. That's all what I do.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much. Let's talk tonight about two practical Purim things that we can work on. I think we like to go into Purim with a plan, and not to feel like Purim is passing us by, but just to be able to actually go through Purim and be able to be kind of something in the Purim. Of course, there's no kinyan more valuable than the actual 4 mitzvahs of Purim: the Mikra Megillah, Mishlayach Manos, Matanas Le'Avyanim, and Seudas Purim. And this year, I'm just going to go over briefly just what's relevant for this year before I get into my, the Musar or Machshava part. This year, Purim is Erev Shabbos. Is that very stressful? Is it?
Yeah.
What?
Yes. Yeah.
A little bit.
Yes.
It is a little stressful?
Yes.
Why is it stressful?
I don't know. It's already such a stressful day. There's so much to do, and now on top of that, you have to make Shabbos.
And you have to make sure that your guests get home in time for Shabbos.
You have to make sure you have a meal.
Right.
Or you just
Friday
continue
stressful
to
day.
Yeah, I
have
mean like a meal.
You
My
add
husband's gonna be there.
Wow. I'm pretty convinced that there are 0 men making any of these cheshbonos.
Of course not. Because anytime I ask my husband, he's like, "Oh yeah, sure, we'll have to. I don't know, maybe we'll have to do that."
Now you're helping me to understand why my wife gives me a certain look every time I say I love when Purim falls out on Friday. I shouldn't say that at home.
At least the clocks have changed.
There is something, I do think that makes a difference that the clock has changed. I'm going to discuss a little piece with you now, just that you understand how it works with the Suda to the best of your ability to be able to do the Suda right. I do want to start off with a hashkafa. I really want to say 2 things to work on Purim, but it is important, I believe. I don't know that we're going to have a shiur next Wednesday night. I'm not sure. So you would like one? That's so nice. Well, but let's take advantage of tonight. Okay. When Purim goes into Shabbos, there is something that's important to appreciate about I'm not even going to get into right now the relationship between Shabbos and Purim, which of course there is a relationship, but I'm not even talking about that. I'm just talking about the fact that we sometimes forget how sophisticated we are. And we look sometimes at Yiddishkeit as just like, yeah, we do these nice customs, we do we follow these halachas, and we forget sometimes, especially we have little children, and Haman was a bad person, and the Jews were going to be killed, and they were saved, yay, those things, which is important. We have to be able to simplify it down to its simple core, of course, but one of the things that's most amazing about Yiddishkeit is that every day, every tefillah, every mix of 2 things that come together, like when Shabbos comes out on Rosh Chodesh, or Shabbos comes out on Yantif, or Chanukah is Rosh Chodesh Chanukah, or Shabbos Chanukah Rosh Chodesh. Each one of those things, there's meaning to it. When Rosh Hashanah comes out on Shabbos, we talk about that. When Yom Kippur comes out on Shabbos, we talk about that. When Rosh Hashanah leads into Shabbos, we talk about it. It doesn't lead in. It starts with Shabbos, right? It could start with Shabbos. I don't think it could lead in because no, it could. It could lead into Shabbos. Yeah, it could lead into Shabbos. Yeah, it could lead into Shabbos, right? What? And Pesach, right? And there is a special relationship. Pesach in the Torah. There's one place in the Torah where Pesach is called Shabbos because it says you start saying Sfira mimacharas haShabbos. So all these things show us that I always try to say when I talk about it in shul on Shabbos that each tefillah or special day or special mitzvah that we have is like another instrument. And when different instruments are playing at the same time, there are different harmonies. It's a different sound. And when we have Purim going into Shabbos, the harmony of Purim leads into the harmony of Shabbos, and they're not the same day. Meaning that there's a certain, I'm going to use the modern word, but I think you'll know what I mean. There's a certain vibe of a Purim Suda. And there's a certain vibe of a Shabbos Suda. Are they similar? Not at all. They're both be happy, they're both be close to Hashem, but no, they're not the same. And even if we are not deep enough at any given time to snap our fingers and to know the depth of every single day, but just appreciate, you feel it, right? You could feel the difference between the havoc of Purim and the menucha of Shabbos. You could feel the difference, even if they're both hard work and they're both serving meals and they're both clearing off the table and they're both taking care of kids. But are they the same? They're not the same. It feels different. Does Purim feel like Hanukkah? It just feels different. I'm not talking about even drinking, without drinking. It just feels, it's a different feel, right? Does Chol Hamoed feel like Hanukkah? They're both weekdays that are a little yantifdik, but there's something different. Does Chol Hamoed feel like Rosh Chodesh? No. Even within Yiddishkeit, days are different. The 3 weeks is not the 9 days. The 9 days is not Tzayim Gedalia, which comes right after Rosh Hashanah. And that's something to be proud of. One of the things that I struggle with sometimes is when people try to mush days together. Like when it's Shavuos and people sing some Simchas Torah songs, because Torah. Like, I always feel like, even if we don't, could you explain to me the difference between the joy of Shavuos and the joy of Simchas Torah? They're both the joy of the Torah. It's sometimes hard to put our finger on exactly what the difference is. But are they the same? It's a different spirit. The spirit of Simchas Torah is one kind of spirit. The spirit of Shavuos is another spirit. Halavai, we should be zeicha to be able to truly understand what produces the ruach of each day. But even if we don't understand it, how cool are we that we have that? We have this rich, diverse harmony of ways to serve Hashem. We don't have just one way. We have many, many tricks in our bag. We could serve Hashem in many different ways. You know, imagine that you would go to hear a shiur from a Rav, and he would give a shiur, you'd be blown away. I said, Mamash, an excellent shiur. I'm very inspired. Next time he speaks, I'm going to go again. So then he speaks, you go again. It's the same shiur as the first time. Like, oh, so I guess it happened to be, he said it twice. Okay, and then next time he speaks, I'm going to go again. You go a third time, that's the same shiur again. So it's a very good message, but it's the same message every time. Avodas Hashem is not that way. We have such a complex, diverse, interwoven relationship with Hashem that every day is different. I appreciate that this year. I'm not trying to take away from the stress of it. I do hear it, and we're joking about it, but I do want to, it's not respectful of me to knock that aside. There is stress to it. Of course there is. And, you know, on a serious note, of course there's stress to it. But I think even with that, there's something to appreciate. That, like, Friday night is going to come. Okay, things could be nuts. Men are drinking. Anything could happen. Okay? And that's a sugya. We have to, that's a sugya to talk about. Okay? That's, I don't know if that's for this shiur, but it certainly is a sugya to talk about. My understanding is that there will be, for the younger couples, hopefully, there'll be some shiurim before Purim to help through this area of like relationships between husbands and wives vis-a-vis Purim, because it's hard sometimes. It's hard. Sometimes women feel lonely on Purim. But okay, that's a side. For now, I'm not. It's not a side issue. It's a central issue. But I'm not speaking about that now. But let's assume that Purim goes with the normal schedule, which means that you're starting the Purim Suda earlier in the day, right? Let's say, and it's a little bit of a rush in the morning. Megillah, Shalach Manis, start the Suda, and then comes the afternoon. So you're cleaning up the Suda. Good luck. You're cleaning up the Suda, and then everyone's bathing, putting on Shabbos clothes, and getting into Shabbos. A few hours later, you're sitting by the Shabbos table. You just went from like Jupiter to Mars, right? Purim Suda to the Shabbos Suda. There's something to appreciate about that. What an unbelievably complex relationship we have with Hashem, that we have so many different ways of celebrating with Him. Okay, so that's first of all. Second of all, just in terms of the halacha, I want to clarify the halacha for you in terms of the Suda on Purim. So the technical Iker Hadin is that you're allowed to make your Sudas Purim anytime you want on Friday. That's really the halacha. And the reason for that is that the Shulchan Aruch says that one is not supposed to eat big meals on Friday. There are 3 reasons, this is very interesting, there are 3 reasons brought in the Paiskim why you should not have an extravagant meal on a Friday. Number 1, which is the most obvious one that everyone knows, is so that you should not go into Shabbos full. We're supposed to have a healthy appetite going into Shabbos, not being super starving, but also not being full. The second reason is that if you're spending time eating an extravagant meal on Friday, you're taking away from preparing for Shabbos. And the third reason is that there's supposed to be a contrast between Shabbos and the weekday, that Shabbos were much more extravagant. But if you're being extravagant on Friday, it takes away from what's special about Shabbos. Okay, those are the reasons. But the Shulchan Aruch says that if there's a special simcha whose zman is Friday, so then you're allowed to have an extravagant Suda on Friday. What would be an example of that? A bris milah. That's the 8th day. I'm sorry. This is the 8th day. Or Pidyon Haben. This is day 30. Something like that. This is the day. Sheva Brachas. It's Sheva Brachas today. What do you want? So things like that, you are allowed to have more extravagant meals on Friday. And therefore, if you would want to have your Suda at 4 o'clock on Friday, I don't know why you would want that, but if you would want to have your Suda at 4 o'clock on Friday, then you are allowed to. However, the Paiskim say that lechatchila, even though you have a pass, because it says Purim Suda is also, this is when Purim is. So even though you are allowed to, but the Paiskim suggest, and the Ramah in Shulchan Aruch and Hilchos Purim says so, that they suggest that you do it earlier in the day. So the biggest lechatchila is to start the Suda before Chatzos, but not everyone can, and not everyone's Suda works out that way. So you try to do it as early as you can, as early as possible. It's not an Aveira. There's such a thing called, you may hear about this over the next few days, there's such a thing called Peiros of Mapa Umakadesh, that you could even have a Purim Suda at 5:30 on Friday. And you could be in the middle of the Suda, and the party is going on, and then you'd be like, I could see Ezzy going for that, actually. I know Ezzy. I could see him going for that.
His oldest son, his Pidyon Haben was on.
Oh, there you go. So I could see, so you could be like, okay, Shabbos, put aside the challah, bring out a becher. I don't know if you'll be able to find any wine. I'm just kidding. Take a cup of wine, make kiddush, continue the Suda. There's such a thing. In halacha. What? Okay, details. We have to work out the details. Okay? But okay, personally, I wouldn't advise it, because first of all, the Paiskim say lechatchila to do it earlier. Also, I don't know that we're on a madrega that we could give proper kavod to both Purim and Shabbos if we mix the two too much. Each one deserves our attention and our care to do properly. Okay? So, but you'll hear different people doing different things, which would be without criticism. Everyone has their own cheshbainas. You may have a host that needs to do it a certain way. People are afraid they're not going to get their shalach manas out, so they can't really start that early. My suit is not going to be that long anyway. Whatever it is, okay, whatever anyone's individual cheshbainas are. Okay, so I just wanted to cover that because of what's special about this year. And there are those of us that have a minute to wash and bench early in the day on Purim, to eat twice on Purim. Does anybody here do that? Okay, so this year you don't have to do that. The Paiskim say, this year we don't do 2 Sudas Purim day. It's Erev Shabbos.
I mean, we usually do a breakfast and a late.
Right.
So
You can't.
Breakfast and a lunch.
You can. I guess you can, but you don't have to. And if they're saying, if you're doing it just to be makbid on the minig, I would tell you not to do it. If you're a person of habit and this is what I do, please don't tell me not to do it. So you can do whatever you want. Okay, but that's the halacha in terms of Friday. Now, on Purim. So we're focusing on the mitzvahs of the day. And one of the important foundations of Purim is that clearly Chazal had in mind that we should be caring for each other and connecting with each other on Purim. That's clearly what they had in mind. And one way or another, somewhere leading up to Purim, I like to mention this, not only to remind you of it, but to remind myself of it. That, Purim is the time that we appreciate that we went mimaves l'chaim, from sure death to being kept alive by HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the Yeshua from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. By the way, of course, we're going to be davening that all Yidden should be, free of captivity and saved mimaves l'chaim, and that will be very, very much on our mind and our tefillas, especially on Purim. Rabbi Kalish was in Landers today in the morning, and he spoke to the whole yeshiva. And there were people there that didn't know it hit them, because I just sent out on the yeshiva chat. Rabbi Kalish will be here at around 9:30. He'll sit in my seat in the basement who wants to join for a vad. So there was a small vad of 150 people that came. The era, something like that. Singing, guitars, the whole thing. But he said something very, very, very moving. He was talking about the hostages a little bit. He said hostages is not a thing in war. When you go to war, sometimes you mamela take hostages, but this whole big focus on the hostages, it's a special thing. It's miyucha to Yidden, because we can't handle if even one of ours is taken. You realize there are American hostages all over the world. You don't even hear about them that much. Sometimes in the country there's hostages. But for us, we're not sleeping. We're davening. We're b'tsar. I can't talk about Purim without mentioning it, right? How many times does it come up in the Shiur? It's on our minds always. That's what he was saying. It's an interesting thing. He's saying and he did not say, he hinted to this, but he did not say it out, but I'll say it out. What he said was the Russians have an American, the Americans have a Russian, so they'll trade 1 for 1. It doesn't work that way for us. We'll trade 300 for 1. We'll trade 500 for 1. You know why? Because our 1 is worth 10,000. Okay, now, I'm not talking about the political implications of that and having terrorists on the street. Trust me, he didn't mean that and not focusing on that, and I don't mean that and I'm not focusing on that. But just the idea that Chazal wanted us to recognize that if we were saved on Purim, we were saved as a nation, not as individuals. We're meant to join together. Nikhalu ha-Yehudim. The Yehudim gathered together as a kehila, as a kahal. We're a group. We're connected with each other. And what did Chazal say? They said, make a suda, sit together with your mishpacha. Mishpacha u-mishpacha. Families, friends, sit together. That's what it says in the Megillah. I'm not telling you some deep drasha here. I'm reading the Megillah to you. Umishloyach, think about it. We're so used to it. Stop. 1 second. Stop for a second. Mishloyach, Chazal are telling us, it's in the Megillah. Mishloyach manai, send gifts, ish l're'eyu, a person to his friend. Why should I do that? Because I want people to be indebted to each other. I want people to be connected to each other. Is there any other pshat? That is clear, right? So it's definitely a day to focus on our value and our chashivos for other people and the sense of chesed that Hashem wants us to have for other people. And in that light, I want to mention 2 things that we could work on practically. And the first one is like this. I once talked about this idea, and I don't think I even fully understood it yet. Because sometimes when you read the ideas of a big Baal Musar, there's layers, and over time you uncover more layers. And I recently uncovered another layer. What am I talking about? In one of the Vadim, in the Sefer Alei Shor, in the second Chelik Alei Shor, where he talks about Chesed, he says something that I have spoken about, but I want to take it now another layer. He says that one of the steps in being a Baal Chesed or a Baalas Chesed is not just doing Chesed, but knowing what to do. And he says he advises the people who are listening to his vad, and these vadim that he writes were real vadim that he gave to people to work together on a midah. He advises them to spend a few weeks looking around at the people around them and thinking to themselves, what does this person need? And we talked about this once, that like sometimes you need a certain amount of cleverness, of chachma, of insight to know what another person needs. And he says to spend a few weeks on it. What does my spouse need? What do my children need? What do my friends need? What do my parents need? I'm a big Baal Chesed, but if I don't know where to put my koyach of Chesed, so then I may not be putting it in the right place. What do they need? And this is a topic that we have discussed here. But I want to point out something that's just starting to crystallize to me. I think that the effect of asking myself, what does my wife need, or what do my children need? It's more than just that if I do that, maybe I'll think about what they need. I think it's more than that. I think that naturally when we live our lives, we tend to naturally make it about us. Because we're us. Adam karoiv eitzel atzmai. A person's closest relative is himself. And sometimes I look at my wife as my wife, someone in my orbit, and my children as my children, and the people I work with as my co-workers, and my parents as my parents. I'm the center, they're the parent. I'm the center, she's the wife. I'm the center, they're the children. So I think about it always vis-a-vis what I need. That's the natural. And that is the natural way Hashem made us. Our job is to transcend that. That's not the way Hashem relates to us. When I think, what does she need? What does he need? It's not just that I'll think of a need that I wouldn't have thought of. Sometimes the needs are incredibly obvious, but I'm just not thinking about the person at all. I'm thinking about them in terms of me. So I wake up every day and we do our thing and this and that, and I'm even nice and I'm kind and we get along and it's very nice. But when I take myself out of myself for a minute, I think, but one second, besides for her being in my world, I'm also in her world. What does she need? A million things will suddenly clarify themselves, that it's not that I like, wow, such a deep insight. No, it's that I wasn't looking through the right window. You're not going to see the right thing if you don't look through the right window. I'll give you a little bit of an abstract mashal because it's a good point. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, when he created Adam, so as a preparation to giving him a wife, he brought all of the creations of the world to Adam, and Adam named them. Vayikra la'Adam shemais. Adam named everything in the world. And the pasuk says, "V'chol asher yikra loha Adam," and anything that Adam called it, kach shemai. That's what its name was. It sounds like a little obvious. Like obviously, if I call someone something, so this is a monkey, and it's a monkey. Yeah, that's what I just said. I called it a monkey, so obviously it's a monkey. What is the pasuk saying? You know what the pasuk is saying? The pasuk is saying an unbelievable thing. The pasuk is saying, and here's layers also. Delicious layers. My father's in the middle of writing a sefer on Chumash Bereshis now. He did on a little bit out of order, but he did on Vayikra and on Devarim, and now he's doing Bereshis, his hardest challenge yet. So I just went through this with him a few weeks ago. When it says that Adam called something a name, you know that in Lashon Kodesh, the name of something is not just a random attachment of a name. In Lashon Kodesh, the name of something is its essence. We've said many times the word Shem, which means name, is also the word Sham, which means there. Because the name carries its essence. Right? So if you have a dog, let's say, is a Kelev, if you understood how the tziruf ha'oisiyos of chaf, lamed, beis fit together, you would have the essence of a dog. And that's what the pasuk is saying, that Adam Harishon was so wise that whatever he called a thing, that was its name. He got it. He understood the depth of everything in the world. Amazing. But there's another deeper layer, and that is like this. Let me ask you something. I have a car in the parking lot. So to me, it's a vehicle that I drive in to get from place to place. But there are kids that play in the parking lot. They don't drive, and it's not their car. They sit on my car. That's not real. I'm making a story up, but they sit on my car when they're playing in the parking lot. So if I was to name this white thing with 4 wheels and chairs, seats inside, I would name it something that indicates vehicle that transports me from place to place. The kids in the parking lot would name it couch. Right? It's not something that drives them from place to place. It doesn't move anywhere. Right? So when I'm saying that Adam named things, he named them what they mean to him. A horse. A horse, for a human being, looks at a horse as something to ride, and he looks at a cow as something to eat, possibly, and something to make leather items out of. And he looks at a flower as something to admire. A grasshopper looks at a flower as maybe something to eat, and a cow as something to run away from. It depends what perspective you're coming from. The Torah is telling you that the world was created for Adam, so his perspective is what actually gives it its name. Isn't that amazing? So when Adam named it, the name, in terms of what his relationship with each thing is, that's its name. You know why? Because Hashem created it for Adam. So I would tell the kids in the parking lot, you don't get to name this car. You didn't buy this car. It's my car. I name it. The world is like that to Adam. But the point that I'm trying to make is that I have a child or a friend or a spouse or a parent or a sibling. How am I looking at that sibling? I have a brother. How am I looking at that brother? Am I looking at that brother as someone who's a brother to me or someone that I'm a brother to him? How am I looking at? And the way I look at him will, if I look at him differently, my description changes and my sense of what's necessary changes and the insights that I have change. I think that this is a very, very big insight, and I think it's something for us to think about over the Purim season, that the Torah clearly wants us to connect better. Chazal want us to connect better. They want us to sit together, to be sameach together, to give to each other. Mishloach manais ish l're'eyu. So if the Torah wants me to do chesed with other Yidden, shouldn't I think about what they need? Not just because then I might think of something, but because then I'll realize that I'm here to give. And I want to point out something else. One of the reasons that we don't do that is because we don't feel like we have what to give. Many of us feel broken or incapable, or like you think about, let's say maybe you have a sibling and you feel like, well, I can think about what she could do for me, but there's nothing I can do for her. You know, she's the perfect one in the family, you know, that type of thing. Take that mushal, plug it into wherever you want. But I think that when I think about people in the sense of what can I do for them, I'm also empowering myself. I'm saying I am capable of being a giver. So I may have a neighbor that intimidates me and that I think seems like always has it together. My wife and I had a neighbor once, and we used to talk about this, you know, like I don't remember what night of the week it was. Maybe it was Wednesday night already, that her Shabbos table was set with the licht, the becher, the thing. Like, we didn't even want to look, you know? It was just like, seriously, come on, do you really have to have that together? You know? And to shift and to think, that's very nice, but what does she need? What does she need? We're the ones that are falling apart on our faces from exhaustion. What do you mean, what does she need? Yeah, you could still give something to her. What does she need? Does she need a compliment? Does she need advice? Does she need a good friend? Does she need a listening ear? Because you have something to give her. Don't just think about the impression she makes on you. Recognize, I can give to her. So at the same time as you're making yourself into a bigger balas chesed, you're also building yourself as a person. You're making yourself very powerful. Someone who can give is a very powerful person. So that's the first thing I wanted to share. That's something to think about. And maybe do something practical with this. Give yourself a challenge that over the next few days, from Parsha Zachar to Purim, it's about a week, I'm going to go over the people in my family, and I'm going to think about each one a little bit. What do they need? And I'll have some insights. What an interesting project. Bring more shalom and chesed into this world. That's first of all. The second thing is a little bit of also an extension of a yesod that we've discussed. But really that's how we grow, by taking year to year, taking the ideas that we've talked about, and then taking them to the next step. So one of the ideas that Purim is built on is that a yid is valuable, infinitely valuable, just for the fact that he's a yid. And although we have Yom Tovim that celebrate the accomplishments of Yidden, the Amunah of Yidden, the Kabbalah HaTorah of Yidden, that's true. But Purim just accomplishes the Yiddishkeit of Yidden. Where do you see that in the story of Purim? What's making me say that? Well, similar to the Nazis, Haman did not just want to destroy the Talmidei Chachamim. He didn't try to do like in the story of Hanukkah. He didn't try to get them to stop learning Torah. He didn't care if they weren't learning Torah. He still wanted them dead. If there was a Yid that had no connection to Yiddishkeit whatsoever, so he would have been like, Haman, you don't mean me, right? Because I'm not like them at all. I do mean you. Why do you mean me? Because I hate all the Jews. Why do you hate them so much? Because they're all holy. Because Hashem chose all of them. This week is Parashat Zachar. We're going to remember that Amalek attacked Klal Yisrael. Who did they attack? Do you know who they attacked? Maybe you think they attacked the Talmidei Chachamim, the Mayatzis Gedolei HaTorah? You think they attacked the shuls and the shtiblach and the yeshivas? Who did they attack? In fact, how would they have attacked all those people? They were Ananei HaKavod that surrounded Klal Yisrael. There were clouds that protected Klal Yisrael. The Amalekim wouldn't have been able to get in.
Wasn't it like the week? Wasn't it that?
What?
Was it that?
Yeah, so it says that there were nechesholim acharecha. There were weak people. You know what weak means?
Sick.
Yeah, it doesn't mean physically weak. The physically weak people could have been, their families would have taken care of them. There were people shepolton ha'anan. You know what that means? The clouds spit them out. They were in such a low madrega that they weren't deserving of being inside the Ananei HaKavod. And the clouds set them out. They needed to spend time out of the Machane. Amalek attacked them. So could you explain to me why we spent the last 3,337 years hating Amalek for this horror that they did, that they started up for Klal Yisrael, if they really just attacked the dregs of society of Klal Yisrael? Why are we so angry at them? You know why? Because we don't have dregs of our society. Because Hashem loved the Jews outside the Anan as much as he loved the Jews inside the Anan. That's the story. This is not a modern 2025 version of the events. This is the story. Look in Rashi. This is the story. They could not get into the Ananei HaKavod. Those that their journey was that HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted them to be outside of the Anonim and to work on themselves until they were worthy of being inside the Anonim, they're the ones that Amalek attacked. And Hashem never forgave Amalek for 3,337 years because you started up with my lowest Madrega child. Because you know something? As you know, there's no lowest madrega child. You know? My wife always says, a mother's always as happy as her unhappiest child. You know? Our children, they're our children. And we are HaKadosh Baruch Hu's children. And there is no such a thing of HaKadosh Baruch Hu having less love for one yid than another. There are madregas. We will talk about, there will be times that we will have this shiur where I will speak about what a Talmud Chacham is, what it means to do a mitzvah, the madrega of doing tshuva. How many times have we discussed doing tshuva? Those are all true things and we value them, but we have to know what the foundation is. The foundation is kulam ahuvim. They are all loved by HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Haman, the Gra says, did not want the Jews to be buried. Have you ever heard that? He did not want the Jews to be buried. There's a pasuk, lahashmid, laharoig, ula'abed, to destroy, to kill, and to obliterate. So each one means something else. But the Gra says that to obliterate means that there will not even be a spot of burial for them. They will not be buried. They will decompose on the fields of battle. That's what Haman wanted. The guy's dead. What's your problem with him? No, that's a Jew over there. That's a Jew over there. It doesn't matter what he did. It doesn't matter who he was. That's a Yid. Was he born of a Jewish mother? Oh, he was? I hate him. I'm not letting him get buried. So that's the level of what someone said to me this week. Or Kalish said something similar actually this morning. But someone said to me this week, oh, the lessons we learned from Rev Haman. What a Rebbe, you know. He taught us how special each one of us is. So I've been thinking about this. I've been mentioning it for the last week or two in any share that I gave. And I was thinking about that a lot of times we talk about this in the context of, like Rabbi Kalish today was talking about in the context of that, like a not religious Jew, or like not to judge people like that. And you probably half expected that that's what I was gonna how this is gonna unfold. And all that is true. I could send you the recording, by the way, if you want, of that. That was very, very beautiful schmooze. But that's not where I'm going for us here. Where I'm going for us here is that we sometimes, in an idealistic kind of way, we realize how special Yidden are. But we have a hard time translating that to our annoying 11-year-old. We have a hard time seeing that in our families, those annoying people. It's a funny thing to say, and I hope you don't think me cynical, but in a way, it's easier for me to hear Rabbi Kalish say that the guy on the plane sitting next to him is just as holy as the guy sitting in Beis Medrash, than for him to say that my relative that annoys me to no end is as halik as the guy sitting in Beis Medrash. Sometimes we allow our personal annoyances and stresses and the struggles that we have with the people in our lives to obscure the fact that we are holy and we are living with holy people. And that's what I thought we would focus on this Purim. I'm sorry, you thought you were going to be off the hook just to think about not religious Jews, but I'm sorry, I'm not making it that easy for you. I want to take it, and it sounds funny, but I want to take it to the next level that even my husband, even my children, even my parents, even my siblings, and even that neighbor are also holy Jews. And oh my goodness, and even, try to hold on to your seats, even my children's teacher, okay? They're all part of that holy nation. I have to be careful how I speak about them. I have to be careful how I relate to them. I have to be careful to remember the reverence that we have for every single Yid. And in a way, it's easier for me to see someone in the street who may be distant from Yiddishkeit, but it's not my friend, my child, my relative, my spouse, my parent. Oh yeah, very holy. But to be sharing a house with someone, even if that person is from and everything, but there's an avodah to do to recognize how precious they are. So my challenge to you for this Purim and for this week of Hachana to Purim is to take both of these things, and you see how they could work together. Make a list. Make a list of a bunch of family members or acquaintances or friends. Make a list. And spend a few days. Your life will change. Spend a few days thinking about what do they need. And then when Purim comes, the day before Purim, on Purim, after Purim, spend the time challenging yourself to cherish them because they are special. And yeah, they have all these annoying habits. You remember what you talked about a bunch of times over there. You all remember this. How like when people die, we have such good memories of them. And suddenly all the annoying things, they vanish. We don't think about them so much. Okay, sometimes it's there a little, but we don't think about them so much. We miss the people that are not alive anymore. We miss them. It's much easier when they're gone, and this is the way Hashem made us. I'm not saying this cynically. Hashem made us this way. It's much easier when people are gone. It's much easier to focus on who they are and how precious they are and what they mean to us and what they meant to Hashem. And to, there was that little annoying thing. In fact, sometimes those very things that were annoying, we're like, oh, that becomes the cute story about them. And that's our challenge, is to be able to do that now when they're alive. When we have friends and we have family and we have people in our lives, to be able to see them for who they are, and they are people that Haman wanted to kill, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu values, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu saved on Purim because they're worth saving. And that, to me, you want to give Shalach Manas on Purim, you want to make a beautiful Shalach Manas, go right ahead, that's your mitzvah. 2 types of food, to one person, by the way, your yaitza. Give Shalach Manas. You want to make a bunch of Shalach Manas, you want to make a list of who you're sending Shalach Manas to, that's great. You want to give gifts to your children's teachers, Shalach Manas, strongly advised to do that, okay? But if you want to do the spirit of Shalach Manas, if you want to live in the ruach of the day, give them your heart. Give them your best version of themselves. Give them a person that looks towards them as what do they need instead of what do I need from them. And with that, HaKadosh Baruch Hu Be'ezer Hashem will see our strong hishtadlus to connect with Yidden and to create one shleimus, one aguda achas, one shleimus, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu is waiting for that. And when HaKadosh Baruch Hu sees how much we are, I see it all the time because I travel and I'm in a yeshiva that's a different type of yeshiva than the yeshiva I went to. It's different worlds colliding. And I see it more and more that we're pulling together. We are. We're pulling together. The world outside is becoming more divided. We are becoming more united. I know there's all kinds of cynicism. I know maybe the letters to Mishpacha don't say that. I don't know. I haven't looked at them in a while. But my sense is that we're starting to take down the barriers between communities, and we're starting to just see Jews. And I think that every step in that direction is a step closer to Mashiach. If we could just see, we could appreciate the differences between us. That's something. That's nice. We could appreciate that we have different minhagim and different styles and different messiahs. That's beautiful. But if we could not let it get between us, no, I can't do a shidduch with them. They come from a different, like that type of thing. No, if we could be able to unite and be friends and learn from each other and not always feel, there's this thing, like always like the way we do things is normal. The way the other messiah does things, that's weird, Instead, we recognize that every Messiah is precious. Then we're bringing ourselves closer to Mashiach, and Hashem should hopefully, Be'ezer Hashem should see us trying to be there for each other, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu should help us, that we should have a Yeshua that will, Teshuasam Hayisa Lo Netzach, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu will be our Yeshua, that we can go into next Purim in Eretz Yisrael without danger, without Hamas, without anti-Semitism, and in our own machane, without the confusion, without the people distanced from Hashem, without the struggles that we have in our ruchnias growth, with shalom bayis in our families, with nachas from our children, with refuos from all illnesses and everything that causes such challenges for families. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu will draw us together and draw us close. Be'ezer Hashem. Yashikayach. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
How did you get that? Oh, turn it off yet.
Basically, my